All right, there we go. So this is the ALC AIM on Tuesday, May 3rd. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Morning.
Hi, Tina.
So, well, we have a good gang here. Thank you very much. I sent out a list of questions that had been suggested by coaches. We have such a great list here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with them. Okay. So the first one's really an ethical question, and this is thought provoking. So let me just read the question. I'm interested in exploring the topic of warning signs in high school student clients, especially in regards to depression, isolation, disillusionment, etc. I just started working with a client who seemed a great fit in our first coaching meeting, an intro coaching session, but I'm seeing glimmers of a darker vibe, so to speak. Interested in what other coaches have experienced, how to tell if our gut instincts are substantial and demand more action, i.e. a conversation with a parent. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
That's a big one. I can tell you from a school counselor perspective what I do.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, from a school counselor perspective, in school, if I have any concerns about a student, having any kind of struggles that I feel like are out of my scope, then I always contact the parent, and I always encourage the parent to look into other evaluation for them.
Mm-hmm.
So and I feel the same way with my coaching with any students. I've made comments to parents where I've been concerned about how kids are doing, and I let them know that may not be things that I can reach with what I'm doing. So I just, again, encourage parents to seek other evaluation.
And so what I'm hearing, Kay, is that when you make the decision that there's something beyond the scope of whether it be coaching or what you do in your role as a counselor, you take that action pretty quickly. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I do, because I know that, and ethically too, I don't want that on my plate. Mm-hmm. If there's something that was beyond what needed to be addressed. And so, I just want to make that really clear with parents and with students. Mm-hmm. I let them know that if I see something that is concerning to me, then I'm going to need to contact their parents, and I get them on board with it. They agree.
Yeah. And I think, Kay, you brought up a really important point. This is one of the discussions we should be having with both the parents of clients and prospective clients or new clients, that confidentiality holds, except if you are concerned about them, concerned about what they might do with others, if there's some illegal activity, in which case their safety and well-being is your primary concern.
Yeah. So it's really simple. I explain to him, I say it's three things. If I'm concerned someone's harming them, mm-hmm. if I'm concerned they're going to harm someone else, or if I'm concerned they're going to harm themselves. And I sometimes forget those three things. Sometimes I'm like sitting there saying, okay, wait, what's the third? But I tell them that those are the three things. And so then it's really easy if I see something. I mean, I just had a situation last week with a middle school student at my school who I had found out that she's been cutting. Mm-hmm. So I needed to address that with her. So it was really easy. We had already cleared that before, those three things. So I said, does this fall under one of those three things? And she said, it was really easy. She acknowledged it. And I said, so it'll be okay to contact your parents, right? And she said, yep. Mm. So I think once you clear those things with them and you say that up front, and I do that in my coaching too. I use the same three things. So then it seems to go much easier.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the keys there was was expectations and communication about what would happen. That's it. Any other thoughts from any other coaches?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's important not to underreact, but also not to overreact at the same time. And that sometimes some students may lack self-awareness about what they're feeling, or maybe the affect that they may be putting off. And so if I'm having a session with a student and their affect seems off for whatever reason that I would get a vibe, sometimes I may discontinue the conversation I'm having and kind of bring the awareness of what I'm getting out to the student, just so that they're aware of it. They might have had a bad day, or, you know, they may not really be interested in the line of conversation that I may have, you know, and taking the coaching session somewhere where they're not really engaging. So kind of get them to kind of to fill in that piece as to whether there is something behind it, or if it's something, you know, or if it's something more serious, or if it's something that we can, you know, it's something that we can like redirect in another way to get them back engaged again. But I've done it in sessions here as an academic advisor where I just feel like an elephant enter the room. And I'm like, I'm going to stop right here and just say, you know, this is kind of what I'm getting. Can you confirm this for me? Or, you know, or say something, you know, different. And it usually, they've had a bad day, just got a bad exam grade, and so they're distracted and they're having a hard time staying engaged. You know, things like that. That gives them the opportunity then to air that out, and then we can return back to our session. So I think the biggest thing is going back to the source and just kind of taking it to them and seeing how they respond. Because sometimes people, you know, even we are guilty of not checking in with ourselves throughout the day. And we can actually pick up a lot of mental and emotional pollution that can affect us in ways that we don't understand unless they're pointed out to us. So.
Well, what's the tipping point to where you would be concerned? Suppose you had that conversation with a student. What would be a red flag or a warning sign for you?
If my concern is that so if a student isn't able to engage, so if a student is acting out of character, or if it's someone that I don't know that well, and they're not able to stay engaged in a conversation, their affect may not improve, then I see that they're not able to get themselves back under kind of control, or being able to manage themselves or their emotions. So then that's when I may recommend pulling in a resource like University Health and Counseling. So I may say, let's call University Health and Counseling, or I'd be happy to walk you over to help introduce you to a counselor and set up an appointment. I always err on the side of, caution. So if I do feel that the student isn't able to pull themselves together, then I usually see that as a sign of distress that needs some more assistance than what they can give themselves.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a theme here, and some of it's judgmental. I mean, judgmental is not the right word, but there's a certain amount of judgment that you as the professional have to use. I'm hearing that both from Kay and from you, Nathan.
Yeah.
And I think this question is, how do you trust that judgment?
Well, hi. I actually have, so to my understanding, Kay and Nathan both work in the school, right?
Yes.
So that's great that you guys actually have those resources. But for some of us that are independent who don't particularly work in a school, I have strategic alliances with 3 therapist psychologists that specialize in teens. So not only is that business building, but it's also kind of a safety net as an independent professional. So I actually have had multiple meetings with these 3 psychologists, the therapists who specialize in teens, to ask them What are some red flags that I should be looking for? What are some warning signs? When can I contact you when I need to? And they're all very, so one of the biggest red flags, well, I think trusting our intuition, which is if something seems a little bit, off, and then of course, like Nathan said, to address it right away and give the client the opportunity to clear it or to address something if we cannot move forward in the session. But then one of the red flags that one of the therapists, actually two of the therapists mentioned, is the feeling of hopelessness. Is that, we all have bad days, but then if there's a feeling of hopelessness that the teen doesn't think that it's like insurmountable, this feeling of despair, then that's definitely beyond our scope of expertise as coaches. So then I also let the client know, what I'm feeling, and then I let them know if I can tell their parents about it as well, and usually they're on board. So how do you trust your judgment? Really, I actually have like a checklist that one of the professionals has emailed me. It's like a depression checklist, which I could email you guys too. It's just good to, so some of the warning signs are on there, and then I actually let the teen know, I think sometimes there's some issues that maybe we need to be addressed, that in order for me to do my best work and for you to get the most out of this coaching, but it sounds like we can't really get to that, and that's okay, no judgment on my part, but I wanted to maybe loop your parents in about that. What do you think? So I think definitely if we're unable to do our work and they're unable to get the most out of our work because of an emotional piece that's insurmountable or seems insurmountable, then it definitely needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting idea, to get some warning signs from professionals that are just some clues for you to so it's not just an instinctive or intuition, but you have a rubric to start making some decisions on. If you could share that, Hayden, that would be fabulous.
Could I jump in here for a second?
Absolutely. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Yes,
So I was a little bit late.
how are you?
I didn't realize I had to download Zoom. So I was the one who actually sent in the question about the teens, not, the gut instinct thing of that something is a little bit off. And right now, what I'm dealing with is that it's not so much of a very obvious, not being able to complete a session or keeping the flow of conversation. It's just something new for me, at least, because the teen decided not to answer a question that I thought was, not very much pushing it. The question was, what are your values? And, and there was also just something I picked up from, the teen basically telling me, expressing to me that he didn't want to really bother his parents about anything. So it's nothing, so, he's not in emotional distress as far as I can tell. On the surface, he seems to be completely fine. He's in school at least, and he's very busy with extracurriculars and band. So it's not obvious. It's not very obvious. But to me, as someone who has had depression and has had teen turmoil, that was something that was very intriguing to me. That when we were setting up the alliance in the very beginning of the coaching sessions with the parents, he just didn't really care to involve them very much. And so it was really that component of secrecy on some things that I found, different, very, very different from everything that I've dealt with since before.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one. In terms of not wanting to bother or deal with his parents, that would be worth exploring. What's behind that? What's the motivation? What's the fear? What are the beliefs? What does he believe about what would happen if he shared with his parents? So, to get down a couple of layers deeper, to get a sense of what's underlying that. because we don't know until we ask them. And that big question of values, it could be that he just has no idea. And so follow on to, I noticed that seemed to be a difficult question for you. What made it challenging? And just see what his response is.
Great tips, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to add too, just again, I've had so much experience working with, all different stratifications of children, and the socioeconomics from, boarding schools for the wealthy advantaged to a reunification program for students, for kids that have been, let out of juvie hall and, trying to work their way to be reunified with their families. And of all the interactions that I've had with kids and their parents, I use the adage, an apple never falls far from the tree. And that when I would meet a child and not be able to make sense of his or her behavior, and then I meet the parent and then I understand the behaviors begin to make sense, how the child inserts himself and understands himself in the scheme of this family. And I see, oftentimes a child who has a push button, a hair trigger temper, you see that in the parent as well. And usually it's one, and then the other one offsets the hair trigger temper of the other. So there's these dynamics that are at work in the family. And it might be that, I look at learned helplessness, and that a child's inability to ask for help may come from a parent who either excessively rescues the child, so the child never actually has to ask for help, or a parent who is completely disinterested and is even unable to rescue themselves. And while I don't mean to go in and psychoanalyze the family and everything, I usually find that is usually what happens, is that this is a life skill that the child probably doesn't have, and that could be something that I would put on the radar for how I would phrase questions and help develop them in the future.
So what would be some questions that each of us might, in this situation, you have a client who doesn't want to bother his parents, or, has expressed reluctance to involve parents. We don't know what's behind it. What would be some questions you might think of to ask that client? It's open to everybody. What occurs to you?
Sorry, can I just jump in here? We're still on the topic of clinical sort of issues coming up, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like we're sort of getting away from there. Is that?
Well, so this actually was Edith's question, so she was refining what she meant by that question.
Oh, okay.
We have two different conversations going here.
Okay. So what I actually heard from Ida, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that a client had said something that sounded really hopeless, and you were concerned that maybe they were seriously depressed or having some sort of thoughts on them.
It wasn't that he was obviously hopeless. It was more like I could sense it because of the reluctance to, have parents be part of the process, and also, just I'd never gotten any client actually say that, not only I don't know. I get that all the time. If I ask a question, sometimes a lot of people say, I don't know. Of course, that's understandable. His response to the values question was, can I not answer that? It wasn't, I don't know. He didn't want to go there for whatever reason, which I did make a mental note to follow up on. But at the time, the vibe of the session was getting into a place that wasn't as very joyful anymore, which, it doesn't need to be all the time, but I had to use my judgment at the time to be like, okay, I need to follow up gently on another session. So that was the bit about hopelessness.
Okay, because my thought when I heard that, my alarm bells went off as well. So, to me, I think that's a situation that would have also made me a little bit concerned, particularly if you see it come up again. But my thought, I have a clinical background, and I've worked with a lot of people who have a lot of attempted suicides and suicide runs in their family, right, where they've had a number of people. I've actually lost some clients, right? So to me, those types of questions, the training that I've encountered in clinical area is that you would want to say straight up, are you thinking of harming yourself? If it does get to the point where you're actually wondering if that's what you're thinking, right? Are you thinking of harming yourself? Or are you thinking of suicide? And that feels really uncomfortable. But I know the field of mental health really struggles with trying to train professionals of all sorts across universities and post-secondary schools alike to feel comfortable saying the words. So I think that's something as coaches we need to do as well, is feel comfortable saying, is this something you're thinking about? Because it's not going to put an idea in someone's head. Like, research shows that it's actually going to make them feel relieved that you asked if they are having that thought. And if they aren't having that thought, 9 times out of 10, they'll just say, oh no, and then they move on. It feels like it's going to be really uncomfortable, but so, I mean, my thought from coming from a mental health background is that it would help for coaches to have a little bit, like in general, to have a little bit of training, maybe like even just an hour or two on how to handle situations where you do have some concerns about them being completely hopeless. Because thoughts like, oh, why even bother? I don't care anymore, can have a different vibe, and often our intuition is right when they do start to take on that vibe of, I literally don't care, right? So I think it's really great that you're asking that, and I think that's something we all need to be really mindful of, and not, it doesn't hurt to just ask, is all I'm saying. And then you can make the appropriate decisions from there. And you can even say, I'm only asking because, this is something that does come up for some people. So if it's not applicable to you, then, don't take any offense, but I need to know, like, is this where you're at? And directly say the word suicide or self-harm, and they'll know. They'll tell you yes or no, and then that'll be end of worrying. But anyway, that's my thought.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about, because the increase of there's been an increase in suicides again of all ages, but especially young people, especially girls. But I was thinking, would it be ethical, instead of asking straight on, could I do something like the whole, take a few minutes out of the session and talk to them about recognizing signs of suicide in their peers, because that's another thing that some communities are doing, like trying to get the teens to be aware of the signs themselves. And I wonder if that would be enough to open up the conversation. What do you think?
My personal thought, and again, this is just coming from, this isn't something that I always thought, it's coming from the training that I've had in mental health, is that it actually can make it difficult for a student. Usually they're touching the subject very gently because they are uncomfortable directly saying, this is me. They're worried about how it's going to affect someone else emotionally. So their concern is if they come in the room and they say, look, I don't want to live today, that you're going to feel emotionally impacted by that. You're going to feel like it's a problem you have to deal with. And they're used to dealing with it on their own. So, like I said, they typically feel relieved when you bring it up if it is what's on their mind. They're like, wow, someone gets it. I didn't have to beat around the bush. I didn't have to feel uncomfortable or embarrassed about that topic. Because if it is about other people, it may serve to kind of still make that conversation a difficult one or a stigmatized one, if that makes sense, right?
Basically, addressing the issue by proxy. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and I do appreciate, though, where you're coming from. Like, it is a tough topic, and not every coach will feel comfortable discussing those things either, right? So I can understand that difficulty, which is why I think maybe getting a quick, even do like online courses and stuff, just a quick refresher on managing that situation. And of course, I'm not saying, like, as coaches, you need to take on the responsibility to handle a crisis situation, but like at least being aware that this is pursuing the problem and then referring, right? But yeah, I would say direct is always the best from every training that I've received. Anyway, that's the end message.
Thank you, Amanda.
No problem.
So is this something that I would have to tell the parents that we would possibly talk about?
I can speak to that as well if everyone else feels okay.
I was just going to cut in really fast just to say that I think it's important to differentiate whether this was something that you felt was pervasive, like this distressing feeling that you were getting, about the session, or was it just brought up from the question? Because if it's brought up from the question, you may just have to step back and kind of look at the question and rephrase it in another way. Like maybe he doesn't understand the nature of the question. It's too abstract for him. And so asking, what does value mean to you? And then being able to help him work and define that term, and then be able to rephrase it in a way that he understands it. And so if that's where he's getting tripped up at and triggering the distress that you're picking up from, what's that?
I said it was not just that question.
So if it's more pervasive.
I arrived to this judgment through a number of sessions. We haven't gone very far yet. We've only had about 2 sessions. But in terms of I've been arriving to this judgment from multiple pieces. Long story short, just things that he said about identity, just lots of things pieced together. It was not just one question. Yeah, though I do appreciate pointing that out, because sometimes it's just a question, right? But in terms of the overall attitude sometimes coming through, and just a lot of pieces of information coming together is how I arrived to this point.
I tend to come down on the side that if you're thinking about it this much, if it's weighing on you, then err on the side of taking some action.
I agree.
Sorry.
I agree in terms of being direct and then being able to take action, because it is on your mind. And then trust, so in this part, when we talk about trusting your intuition, like it sounds like some action needs to be taken. And definitely, is there a cultural element to this with this client in terms of his parents or not being like Caucasian? I'm just wondering, because this.
Yeah.
Okay. So my intuition is
actually, and through my experience as Asian American, being born in America, that's definitely colored my perspective. So I can't assume. However, he is half Caucasian, half Asian,
okay.
and so.
well, you're in the Bay Area, or you're in Davis, right?
Yeah, I'm in Davis.
Well, just so you know, I'll send you another resource. May is Mental Health Month, and there's someone in Palo Alto who is specializing in Asian American teens and communication with their families, because that is a very unique piece.
It is.
It's very unique. And this happens to be an Asian American psychologist, which is rare, because mental health in Asian American communities is different, because they usually don't look for help in mental health field. So you should definitely reach out to this organization. I think they're in Palo Alto. And in case you guys don't know, Ada was speaking about there's been a rise in teen suicide, and especially in the Bay Area, I think particularly in kind of upper middle class affluent families, and 40% of the 40% is Asian American actually of these recent suicides. It's very sad, but that just shows that in the Asian American community it's difficult to talk about, and the families, the parents tend to just don't talk about it. That's how they deal with it, so.
It's very different. It is very different, and a lot of the times I feel like perhaps I don't know where the conversation is in terms of addressing coaching to different population groups, but I think it's worth looking into.
I think the rise of suicides in teenagers and young adults is prevalent. We're experiencing that in the Boston area. And that actually opens up a little broader topic, which is, what if you suspect your client is depressed? Understanding the signs certainly would be helpful. I've had 2 situations where the parents suspected the teenager was depressed, wanted the teenager to go to get therapeutic or clinical help, and the teenager said, "Oh no, I'm working with Gina, I'm okay," and I've had to terminate the relationship. I've had to stop the coaching until the teen started working with a professional clinical person and would only resume after they were well under the care and after the therapist gave approval for us to be working together again. And in one case, 4 months later, while working with a therapist, one of these teenagers did try to take her life. So, but she was under the care of a professional. It's not on my shoulders, and it shouldn't be on my shoulders.
I was going to just add, I don't know about in everyone else's areas, but through several of our public school districts, if you go to their websites, they, at least one that I worked for, and I knew it was available to the public too, is it has a suicide training that you can do online. And you can just go through if you want to, kind of beef yourself up on understanding more of those signs. And it was like a 3-hour kind of training online. And I had to do it as part of my school counseling license, but it's a lot of valuable information. So I think that could be another support to just know what you need to look for and what you need to watch for.
So I think it's important. Sometimes in my experience, I realized that some clients that actually need professional like therapy services, but there's kind of a stigma to it, then they go to a coach instead because that's less stigmatized. So that happens sometimes too, is like the parent actually may know that they actually may need a psychologist or a therapist, but a coach sounds better, right? So they'll come to a coach, but then we'll realize, wait a second, this is like beyond my scope. So we actually need to be clear in the initial session. It's pretty laid out, what we do and what we don't do. We need to be clear. Like, we're actually not therapists, we're not psychologists. Emotional pieces may come up and, we can talk about it. However, if it's too insurmountable or it's preventing us from moving forward in our work, then we can't actually move forward. So it's important that you kind of lay that out in the beginning, because we're not a substitute for a therapist. And I think sometimes people kind of think that, like even what Gina said, oh, I'm already working with Gina, I don't need to see another person. Because, as you guys know, like psychologists and therapists, there's more of a focus on trauma or the past or trying to get over something, or there's some sort of diagnosis. And we don't have that training.
Right.
In answer to your question, though, about whether or not you should tell the parents, I would say you definitely have to tell someone if you're that concerned. Like, especially if you ask and you find that they are concerned. Like, have you ever gone over a confidentiality agreement or anything like that with them, or spelled out any sort of your limitations that way?
I think I need to be clear. I think I do hit all the points, but I think it needs to be truly very spelled out, if not in writing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that piece particularly is in my signed agreement document.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you.
No problem. Something
And the agreement there.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
I was going to say, like Kay had mentioned, those 3 things that she covers. I used to do that with my students as well, just sort of give them, these are the areas that, like, topics that could come up that if they do, I would need to speak to somebody, like an appropriate authority, because I'd be concerned for your well-being. And I get that out of the way, like, first session, before they open their mouth, because then as soon as they say something, I'm liable to deal with that situation. At least they know, like, I'm not breaking their trust.
I actually do the same thing when I have the initial just getting to know you session with the student. We talk about confidentiality, and I'll say, I won't just say, if I feel that you might do something of harm to yourself or somebody else, I list them out. That includes alcohol, that includes drugs, that includes risky sexual behavior, that includes any thoughts of harming yourself, cutting. I actually name them so they know.
I think every area has different laws on that too, like what you're required to report. And like, one of the things I have to report as well is if I become aware that a child under the age of 16, so someone else, is actually at risk of being harmed, even if it's not at their hands, right? Like if they're being abused at home, one of their friends who's under 16. So I have to weekly report that. So it might be worth looking into what the legalities are on that. And it's probably not a difficult thing to find out if you were to just ask like a local mental health agency or something like that.
Amanda, which state are you in?
I'm actually in Canada, so I don't know if
Oh.
the refugee area might be different, but I do believe
Yeah.
states
Yeah,
have different.
it is by state, it varies. Yeah, okay.
Right. So yeah, I'm in Ontario. So
Right. Thank you.
Actually, it's come up before, like, so as coaches, though, we're not mandated reporters, though, right? We're not.
We are.
Okay,
No.
we are.
We're not a mandated reporter. No, that's different. We are not protected as doctors and lawyers are with client confidentiality. So if our client does anything illegal, if we are subpoenaed, we have to testify. Client confidentiality does not cover us in that regard. So that's why it's important to spell out for your clients what's confidential and what's not. And I always put a word around what I perceive. So it's not just if you, I make it pretty clear. If I think you are considering something of risk to yourself or others, if I think that you're being harmed by somebody else, so I'm taking the responsibility for, it's my opinion. And in my opinion, if this is worrying me, I'm going to take some action.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so Ida, how are you feeling now about that situation and the question?
A lot better. I mean, I knew moving forward what questions I needed to ask the students, but I think I'm a lot more comfortable with not only this situation, but what I need to do as you know, just gather more resources around me. So yes, thank you. This is amazing. I really needed that. Yeah.
It brought up a lot of interesting ethical issues, and I'm glad it helped. Do you feel complete now, Ida, with that?
Me?
Yes. Are you
Yes.
feeling good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So we had a bunch of questions today, and Nathan, you submitted several questions. So let me ask, of the questions you submitted, and since you're here with us, is there one that you'd particularly like to focus on? You're on mute, Nathan.
There we go. I'm just trying to look at those again, like which ones. I know the first one that I had asked was about, about beginning to actually be able to put your ideas or experiences down into a book, and actually getting ideas on how to begin that process. Let's see.
Yeah, and can we explore that one, because we have Hayden here. Hayden has written, maybe even published his first book.
Wow.
It's in the process of getting shopped around to publishers, but the book hasn't been completed. I have a literary agent, so once we get a contract with the publisher, then I'll have like a certain amount of days to finish it. But I had to do a certain amount to get an agent, so I'm in the process.
So Nathan, what's your question around writing and coaching? What specifically would you know?
Well, some of the things that I see people, as I'm researching other people and seeing how they have different types of resources, whether it be a course that a person could take online, or even like one of those small, Amazon. I'm seeing these ways where people are writing these smaller books. They may just be like 12 to 24 pages, and they'd be maybe like an ebook, but they themselves are just an introduction to the concept of coaching, and that really set the person up for an invitation to kind of seek out our what we have to offer by way of our services. So they would do a little bit of the work. It would be kind of like a teaser that they would complete, and hopefully it would whet their interest in and familiarize them with coaching and what it is. And so I'm really interested in really developing something that I could kind of put out there as a way of introduction to coaching, what it is and what, and why, and why people should want, why people should value or want coaching or seek coaching. And so I'd like to be able to again, it's not like a whole book. It's just, a dozen pages, and just compiling like some valuable exercises, sharing some vignettes. So that's kind of like what that's what I'm looking at, the idea of exploring as a way to an extended introduction.
So let me chime in here. So it sounds like what you're describing is some sort of like ebook, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or workbook.
Yeah.
And then perhaps it can be expanded to something eventually that could actually be published into a book. Okay. So is this something that you're planning to use to opt people into your mailing list? Because that's a big thing that people do, is they'll write like a short book, and then it's a free gift if they sign up for your mailing list. Is that your idea? Because that's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I just see these amazing marketing examples of people that have something to share. Again, it's something, and it looks like people are paying for it. So there is like these, so they would pay for it, and then they would complete it. And then, then you would have the option. It would have your contact information, like your website or things like that. And then also offer like discounts or, a free personal session. I just got done listening to a webinar actually that was put together by a career coach. It just blew me away. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. But I wasn't looking at the webinar as being like my choice, what I would want to, how I would want to present what I do. And so I thought maybe an ebook would be, a good idea. So it's just, again, just giving people the opportunity to become acquainted in their own time without all that pressure or, the whole tactic of selling going on necessarily, actively.
When I think of it, go ahead.
This is Brenda, Nathan, and I love your idea. I joined Social Boom, and they do a ton of talking about how to do that, how to help people connect with you. And they say people don't buy from people unless they know, like, and trust them. And so as you're thinking about the ebook, I wanted to share canvas.com is a great place, very inexpensive to create something like that. And then the way that Social Boom does it, and I'm not quite sure yet myself, but they have a free ebook, and then they have a more expanded one that's like $9, and basically it's their sales funnel. So people come in, with that free something that they're interested in getting, like some coaching tools. And then the next one is a small dollar amount, and then that leads to your coaching services. So that's kind of what that can look like. And I don't have all the platforms figured out yet, and it takes a long time to do an ebook. So anyway, I've got one, and it's free, but eventually I'll have a paid one, and have that funnel set up.
Nice.
And when I see what I think are effective ebooks or workbooks, they're rather focused. So it's not just what is coaching, but maybe how to survive finals. The coaches 10 ways to survive, 10 steps to survive finals. And Nathan, that's your world. You know what questions or what advice you would give.
Oh yeah.
students. You could probably document that in no time flat and have something really interesting and rich and that people would benefit from, and then they want more.
Yeah. Yeah, I know one of the things that, especially in academic advising that I'm running into is, it's what parents, they take their freshman students to orientation and they see all of these people, but they don't understand that everyone retreats back to their offices, and that the history and culture of the profession that we're in is such that we assume every student at 18 years old is now as a legal adult, and if they need help, everything that we offer is voluntarily. So, and parents don't always know that, and no matter how much outreach, in fact, students just don't answer their emails or respond to emails, and staff are overburdened with high, numbers of student advisees, and advisees come in asking questions, and I'm recognizing more and more how many of their questions are really, there need to be other questions answered prior to that before the student can really meaningfully understand the answer and make a decision based on the question they're asking. So there's a lot of unpacking, and a lot of it is developmental. One of the big things is students come in and they kind of see professors as being these kind of juggernauts of knowledge, and they're just being sponges to absorb this knowledge. Whereas we really want to move them to the place where they're active participants in the construction of knowledge, where they take ownership. And students, I'm seeing more and more students aren't making that transition because there isn't anything done on the behalf of an administration already burdened with the bureaucratic and administrative side to be able to really develop students. And so more students are going through college without ever developing these skills, and it's hitting them when they get to the higher levels where they're being expected to do things that they don't understand or have the concept of being able to perform because they're still looking for answers, which is causing a lot of problems with plagiarism, people trying to take other people's ideas. A lot of students are working together in groups and coming up with this knowledge that really isn't theirs. And it's a lot of professors just don't know how to deal with this problem of students unable. And I mean, I work at Northeastern, and it's a very good university. And so my job, I'm looking at as an academic advisor and an academic coach is really letting parents know, oh my gosh, there's an appearance, there's an oppression that's being made to you, but the reality is vastly different. And too many students are really falling through, especially this generation with its learned helplessness, just don't have those life skills to go outside of themselves to ask for help or to be able to do it effectively. A lot of them are relying on their peers and getting the worst advisement, and it's costing thousands of dollars and delaying graduation, and it's just, a lot of things. So I'm like, wow, there's such a market to really be able to deliver this, but the parents need to know. It's like ignorance is not bliss. And it's something that I want to kind of create an ebook on and break up into, separate topics that would address like the freshmen, getting them in here and helping them be successful.
Well, that sounds like the perfect application. And Ida in chat put in some resources for you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I'm excited. This is
yeah.
It's a funny image. It's not so much of a resource, but it's something that I used in college.
Okay.
Cool.
Can you put it out there again? Because I didn't get it. Ida, wait, whatever you typed in there.
Yeah, I actually just put in, I think it's, is it Beth? She said canva.com. She was talking about canva.com. So I just typed it out. And then the next one that I gave to Nathan, it's just a funny photo that you can open it. It's just funny.
Okay. If you go down to the bottom of your screen and click on the chat.
I like that.
Oh, in the chat? Oh, okay.
Click on the chat.
Okay, got it.
Got it?
Yep, I got it.
Oh, that's so good.
I also want to just say, if anyone writes a blog or if anyone has a newsletter, that's a great starting place to look for ideas to write a book or an expanded version. Because if you already have a blog, that you semi-regular contribute to, any one of those articles can be expanded into an ebook, and then the ebook can be eventually expanded into a full-size book. So you don't have to start from scratch, because you don't have to, I want to write a book, but I don't know where to start. If you're like blogging, you probably already have a book there. So you can just expand it. And I love even what you were saying about kind of the skills that students need to take ownership in college. Like that itself is its own ebook, but you can use life coaching tools to make a workbook out of it too. Like to have some exercises, ask some powerful questions, and I think that'll be very helpful. And that could actually be a blog post. What you could actually do is make it a blog post, and then there can be a link to download your ebook or something like that.
You just inspired me. I love it. I could see myself creating a blog, and something that would attract parents' attention is, what parents need to know, what parents and students need to know about, about going to college or about succeeding in college. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just that I'm getting so much, and I have to tell you, I don't mean to speak deprecatingly about advisors, but, people just make a lot of assumptions. And the people that are in advising, this is perhaps one of the most important roles. And yet universities are doing away with professional advisors and allowing faculty advisors to advise with no background in student development. And secondly, advisors that are here, many are here because it's a very kind of safe position. You could be here for a lifetime, and it's a nice office job, great benefits, pay sucks, but that's okay because most people that do it are two-income families, so one can afford to not work that much and have ample time off. And it's a nice environment. It's a really nice thing. You get free tuition, and your kids get to go to school for free. So it's a place that attracts people, but they may not, and their idea of their job, there's no central focus of what an academic advisor is or does. It's just the job responsibility, which a lot is administrative, and it's really not trying to develop students so much. It's spoken about at conferences, but you don't ever see it enacted really in a lot of settings.
Yeah, I've actually been in higher education for quite some time, or at least affiliated with it, and we know that, and you and I probably know in the industry that most larger schools, at the very least public universities, they on purpose, they purposely don't advertise their services because they know that if everybody on campus knew about what they did, they would totally overflow and not be able to cater to them.
Yes.
So, it is definitely happening, and that's why I have a job.
Yep.
Well, Nathan, it sounds like you have a very rich idea here.
Thank you. I'll definitely reach out to you guys for additional ideas and inspiration. I that's what I love about these sessions.
Well, what's the first step for you?
Oh, thank you. I was going to start looking at some of these platforms because I need to get something down. And so I guess one of the things is just finding the best delivery service, because I feel like it's all inside here and I already have so much ready to come forth. And like I said, I guess it's just it's that piece about getting like, what website should I use to set myself up? And I really want to make sure, I really want to be able to put I like Hayden's idea of beginning with a blog and really just finding a delivery service, that I can go online and start writing that down. And I have the title already. But one thing is I'd really like to be able to write something and have it kind of reviewed, because I always welcome another point of view to make sure that the message that I wish to convey is being conveyed successfully.
So do we have any bloggers in our group here that might be able to make some suggestions to Nathan?
I blog some. I'm pretty slow at it.
I do some.
What platforms do you use?
I just
Well, I
use
have my,
website.
oh, go ahead, Nina.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I have my website, which I want to refine more, but I put in it a section for a blog. And so I have written some, but I get kind of overwhelmed with getting it done. So, but I've done some. I mean, that just kind of ties into my whole website that I need to get connected more with SEO and all that anyway. But I think it's a great place to write a quick short thing on an experience with a client or a quick, you know, coaching topic or something like that. So I think the one thing, the phrase I always try to keep in my head is better done than perfect, because I've heard that from a lot of people who write.
Yeah.
And you can obsess over all your ways to deliver it and all your ways to do it and who's gonna get it. And I mean, I obsess about a lot of that because I have all these ideas of writing books too. Yeah. But I do keep reminding myself, just better done than perfect. Yeah. So just trying to get a small project done and then moving on to the next one.
Great. I like that.
I actually remember one of the questions on the list for today was something about how to market or address both parents and students. That's a really tricky territory because everything that you put out there, you know, parts of your clients are students, but a lot of the times the people paying are the parents. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, for your ebook and your blog and whatnot, sometimes you'll have to really figure out, you know, who exactly it is that you're speaking to and then tailor it from there. Yeah. Another thing that I've been, you know, meaning to do with my blog is, you know, you can go on to, you know, a lot of those like bigger contribution sites like Mashable and whatnot, and you could try to find you know, people who like write something similar in terms of the topic, and you can ask and basically just, you know, contact them and ask if they would be willing to highlight or allow you to guest blog a piece. Okay. And that's really useful because that way you're not restricted to your own website. People go on to places like Mashable and whatnot already. There's so many sites out there, but that's just one of them. And that's one idea to not only get followings for yourself, but also to have a wider reach beyond just your own website and your own delivery platform.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's a lot to... I know I heard someone talking about how to, you know, when you do something, you could affect the Google AdWord to up the, you know, to do the right search terms to make it more likely that you'll be able to drive traffic to your site. And the more I learn, the more cans of worms I open, the dizzier I get. And I'm at the same time, I'm always trying to develop myself as a coach, which is always looking at questions, meditating, and really learning about how I can, because to me a big part of coaching is developing presence, and that's something that I really want to make a centerpiece of what I can do as a coach for somebody, and really helping bring them to that space in themselves where the coaching session can be most effective. I've recently started meditating just about a month and a half ago, and I've been finding it just amazing. Just so amazing, so profound, and I like to even incorporate that into my coaching. Just because to get out of that monkey mind, mm-hmm. and really be able to get to a place of real mindfulness, you know, it's so important and can add value to the coaching session. So.
Well, you have a lot to write about, Nathan. So when would you like to start?
You know what, I purposely stopped working my second job so that I would actually have time to begin, you know, contributing to coaching. And so I think actually what I'd like to do, instead of I was going to say look forward to the weekend, but I've been breaking tasks down to 15 minutes. And I think if I would write for 15 minutes an evening when I get home, say like even this evening, usually after I'm done with the cooking and cleaning and taking the dog out, just have my notebook there and just start writing. I think that's what I'll do. Like tonight, I can even say it's usually around like 7:30 is probably the best time. So I like that.
We'll be thinking of you at 7:30 tonight and sending you a lot of creative energy.
Thank you. I definitely am very inspired and very passionate. So
Fabulous. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you know, actually, Ida brought up another question which was interesting, which was the marketing. You know, gee, we have a little bit of a challenge here. Our clients are students, but our target market for marketing are parents.
Yes.
Yeah, and how do you balance that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what are some thoughts? What have any of you tried? Rejected? What's worked?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is what I do. I like semi-regularly blog, and it's always like 5 tips to end the school year strong or something like that, right? So what I do is I market it to the parent in the sense that the introduction is to the parent, but then it's like the school year is the end and everyone's stressed out, blah, blah, blah. But here are 5 ways to end the school year strongly. So the intro is kind of focused to the parent. But when I actually go into the 5 tips, it's written to the student. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So then I go like, I talk in first person, like you need to talk to your teacher. Number 2, you need to, I don't know, make a calendar of your finals, whatever. But then, so the intro is to the parent, and then, but the action steps I'm advising them to take is written to the student, right? Because that's what coaching is. Because it's not that I'm telling the parent to tell their student to do this. It's more that I'm speaking to the student. So the parent gets a flavor to how I would talk to their kid. That makes sense. That's how I do it.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
How about your website?
Oh, my website is to the parent. Yeah. It's my blogging is first person to the student. The intro is first person to the parent. Then the meat of the article for the action steps is first person to the student.
For my website, I try to make sure to incorporate keywords for both demographics. So for example, you know, a lot of the parents, at least for teenagers, they care about, you know, grades, right? Or just balancing stress, managing stress, all that. Whereas, you know, but at the same time, my graphics and my design is very, you know, up to date and appeals to a younger audience. There's a lot of smiling faces on there, and a sense of fun, you know, in terms of the photos that I use. But yeah, most of the language at first, at least for targeting to teenagers and high school students, I try to put in the biggest concerns for parents, but then make the language more approachable so that if a teenager does happen to go onto the website or the parent does refer them to the website, they don't feel like talked down to or patronized. There's actually a sense of fun. So that's basically how I try to incorporate both. Oh, and my content for Facebook versus Instagram is completely different. Facebook, that's where I put some of the heavy hitter articles, you know, education, highereducation.com or whatever. But for Instagram, it's all like tips, you know, for the day. Like, you know, this is what you need to be doing. Hey, you know, last registration day for ACT is coming up.
That's interesting that you're targeting the social media marketing to a different age group, a different generation. Yeah.
It works better that way.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
We're stunned.
That's a lot.
Any other ideas?
Well, there's different forms of marketing, right? And so I mean, a lot of people, they just think social media, but in terms of making that sale, I know that Hayden would know a lot more about this than I do, closing the sale. But for college students, I approach things a little bit differently because most of the time I sell directly to them. Mm-hmm. They make the decision. So I usually try to approach them through student works and student groups, whereas for high school students, it's through, things like parent auctions, open school night, things like that.
Mm. Yeah, so high school, it's marketing to the parents. College, it's marketing to...
Right. They by the time they're in college, they do see the value inherently in what you're offering. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ida, if you would contact me, because I'm interested in how you reach out to parents. As a Northeastern employee, I have no ability to work with Northeastern students, of course, because it's a conflict of interest. But yet, here in the Boston area, we have tons of universities and then there's boarding schools. And the thing is that how to reach out, how to connect with the people that need to know what the services are, because just parents don't know. And I'm seeing that there are some offices that pop up on campuses to try to help. And there's a bunch of people in the area that are just students that are like graduate students, and they kind of try, they kind of hedge in on the market and offer their services, but they're not really trained. Mm-hmm. They don't really have credentials. But people don't understand that, and then, they're just paying this $45, for a coach, but this coach is really not a coach. It's a self-proclaimed coach, but not somebody who truly is, has that background in student development and coaching, and so that's another thing, is about educating them about what they're getting for their money. I think is an important factor.
I have been seeing on a lot of coaches' websites, they do the whole, I'm part of, was it WACAC or NACAC or whatever those acronyms are, the coaches associations by region, mm-hmm. and then the whole, obviously ICF credential and all that. So there's, I have, my website's under construction right now, but I have under my FAQ page, why us? Right, and then one of the things that we say is because we're actually certified. There are certifications. There's no regulation in this industry. There's no laws that you would be breaking if you just say that you're a coach and you do coaching. But that we have our own industry standards and credentials. So that's something that you can very stress really strongly, especially in your blog and in your ebook. That would be something that I would look into. And then in terms of, that really sticky market that you're in,
yeah.
You have that conflict of interest, which really sucks, by the way. You honestly, one thing that I start learning like early on, because I just started this. I really just only a couple years. Hayden's been in this for a much longer time than I have. But my personal network has actually brought me a lot of clients as well and connections. So one thing that I, really recommend to my clients as well is if you join an organization, for example, Oddfellows or Rotary, or for me, I'm in Disrupt Optimists, which is an international women's org. That's been amazing because, you're talking about boarding schools being nearby and, some of the more advantaged population, you could just rub shoulders with them and wine and dine in the same areas, and that would help.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, I am just realizing that my my Surface has one time and my desktop has a different time. Oh, I'm realizing what time it really is. I wonder why my Surface doesn't
I have a final question that might be really simple to ask. Regarding the conference at the end of June,
yes,
really sadly, I'm not going to be able to go. I would love to be going there, but is there going to be any kind of webinars or live streaming or anything that goes with that, or any way to get the information?
Hayden, do you happen to know? I don't know the answer to that. Hayden, do you happen to know?
I don't know. That's a good question. Like, to my knowledge, I don't think we have any like things set up at the moment. But yeah, I mean I don't think so is my answer right now. But
Hey, you're not the only person to ask that question. I had this conversation with another coach yesterday. I'll reach out to John and find out, and if he hadn't been thinking along those lines, plant the seed and suggest that you a lot of input.
Yeah, I would totally access whatever is available that way. I just can't be there.
Okay.
So
Ask Beth to Periscope. She's really into Periscoping, which is, it's not like a whole recorded thing, but it might be little snippets of what's happening in conference, and you'd be able to watch that.
Okay, terrific. Wonderful. Well, thank you all. This was a great discussion. Thank you for bringing some questions and for bringing your thoughts and advice. Let me just say, we are going to move to summer hours now for AIMS, so we're going to do every other month. We'll meet again in July, and then in September.
Okay.
Okay. So
Thank you so much, all.
turn off the recording and